Hi, the purpose of this video is to explain some things about the current Scrabble political situation and how it relates to my banning from Scrabble tournaments, and why all of this means that I must advocate for some pretty large changes across the Scrabble world. Um, I want to be clear that I have been involved in Scrabble for a very long time, both as one of the top players and someone who's had a lot of experience and knowledge of the different organizations around the world and what has worked and has not worked in terms of Scrabble leadership, in terms of the direction of the game. And my interests in improving the Scrabble political situation are not just about my own story. There are plenty of places that I believe I can make a big difference and improve things that are beyond the issues pertaining to me alone. But in order to keep this video relatively concise, I'm going to stick in this video to just the stories about me and my banning and how it relates to all of this. I will, in the future, make other videos or written statements that will address other issues in the Scrabble world beyond the ones that pertain to me specifically. But there's a lot I need to say about this first. So first off, because of extremely corrupt leadership in the North American Scrabble community, I have been banned from playing by 3 different organizations. The North American Scrabble Players Association, or NASPA, has banned me for 3 years, and there are 2 other renegade associations named WIGPO and COCO that both banned me for 5 years. All of this happened in 2022. In particular, the ban from NASPA came about in September of 2022. There has been further corrupt behavior by the executive board of WESPA, the World English Language Scrabble Players Association, which is kind of the connective tissue that connects all of the different national associations around the world, that has stopped me from being able to get justice and get these unjust bans stricken down. And if you look at the time, it is already 2025. We're heading into the second half of the year soon. And by that timeline, it might seem that my ban from NASPA is going to end in the relatively near future, in September of this year. However, as I'm going to explain a little later in the video, things are not that simple. And even after we reach a 3-year point, there are still some sticking points that stop me from being able to play tournament Scrabble. So before I get into a whole bunch of details about the specific corruption and what happened, I want to just mention one very broad thing that is kind of an obvious sign that something was wrong here, which is that after NASPA made this ban, I actually took all of the materials all of the communications between NASPA and me, all of the evidence that was submitted by my accusers and my responses with my own evidence to it, and passed all of it along to both WESPA, the World English Language Scrabble Players Association, and ABSP, the Association of British Scrabble Players, because I've been playing a lot of tournaments in the UK over the last many years. And in fact, I am the first ever American to be recognized as a Grand Master by the Association of British Scrabble Players. And the board of ABSP looked over all these documents and made a reasonable and proper conclusion, which is that there were no good grounds for my suspension, and that NASPA intentionally mishandled my decision, did not do this in a fair or just way at all. And they made what was an unprecedented decision to say that they would not reciprocate the ban of me in North America. And it's never happened before. That one national association actually said, it is so clear that this was mishandled, that Dave was not treated fairly, that we will not respect that ban, and he is allowed to play tournaments in our country. However, what then happened after that is that WESPA themselves bullied the leadership of the Association of British Scrabble Players into banning me anyway, specifically saying that I could not play in WESPA-rated tournaments within the UK or any other country outside of North America. And there's a lot about how this was handled at the WESPA level that was also very unethical. They refused to handle an appeal of my decision against NASPA, despite the fact that there was a clause in the WESPA Constitution saying that one could appeal the decision of a national association up to the level of WESPA. And they were extremely petty and dishonest in delaying communications with me. They did not get back to me at a time when they said they would, when they'd already written their responses. And I learned a lot about this pettiness and some of the other improprieties from WESPA's communications, specifically because people on the WESPA board actually leaked information to me about some of these conversations that happened behind the scenes there. Now you might ask, why did people on the WESPA board leak this information to me? And the answer is because I am an honest and ethical person. I have been handling myself with dignity in the proper ways in all of my official communications with all of these Scrabble associations, and I have shown in very diligent ways that I did nothing wrong and that I am the victim in this situation. And despite all of that, I keep getting greater and greater wrongdoings piled on by the people who are trying to kick me out and keep me out. Now, when I say this, I'm dealing with a lot of unethical leadership in these North American associations and in WESPA. I do not mean to indicate that every one of these leaders is unethical. There are a few people in these organizations who are ethical and are chagrined at how a bunch of these leaders have been behaving, and that is why I'm getting some of these leaks back. And I have attached names to some information that I have shared on my blog that talks about this. But there are other pieces of it that I've kept anonymous, specifically because there are people on the boards who did not want to jeopardize their positions on those boards and still wanted to let me know about what was going on behind the scenes there. So anyway, moving back from WESPA for a minute, back to NASPA, I mentioned that the ban is supposed to supposedly end in September of this year. But it is not that simple, because NASPA has additionally put a number of unacceptable conditions on me being able to return to Scrabble even after this 3-year period is up. The first and main one of those that is a big problem is they say that I need to take down my blog at splenetic.net, or specifically the parts of it showing private information about Jennifer Lee Clinchy and Brianna Lola McKisson. Now, this is a completely unacceptable ask for a number of reasons. I need to be able to defend myself. Both of these women told horrendous lies about me, and I have a huge amount of evidence showing that there is absolutely no truth to their stories, and that they very intentionally made defamatory statements, said things they knew were false, in order to slander my character and get me pushed out of this game in a completely unjust way. And this is not an invasion of their privacy, because they are the ones who decided to take our private relationships and write lies about them and use them as a Scrabble political issue to drive me out of the game. In doing that, they have given me implicit permission to share my own side of the story about what happened in those private relationships, so that I can clear my name, so that I can show that there is absolutely no veracity to what they said. Furthermore, I attempted to give my defense to this simply to the Scrabble Association leaders, and in the court of law as well, as I had to take them to court for defamation. But I only ended up publishing a bunch of this material on the blog later because the Scrabble associations decided to pile on so much of their own wrongdoing and not handle my situation in an appropriate and responsible way. And the Scrabble association leaders showed that they will not do the right thing without being held publicly accountable for their actions. So if the Scrabble associations are upset with this information about Jennifer and Lola being out on the internet, they can look into themselves for blame. It is their fault it is up there. I had to post this because they would not do a responsible job. They had to be held publicly accountable. So it is very much my opinion that it is abusive behavior by the Scrabble associations in trying to twist my arm and force me to take down this blog. Furthermore, even though I did lose in court, it is clearly the case, if you look at the details of the evidence I presented in court, and of how the defendants, the Clinchies and Lola, handled the case, that the case was clearly valid. They only fought against it really by distracting and confusing the judge and trying to take advantage of technicalities to get things thrown out of court in an early way before things ever went to trial. They didn't actually do anything to contest the real life story of the defamation that they committed. If you look at the facts in an honest way and look at how mishandled it was in the courts, and I've given ample evidence of that, including a huge number of court documents on my blog and including a full audio recording of the one-hour hearing that we actually had in front of a judge, they clearly defamed me and I am clearly the victim. And they managed to subvert the justice system to not get a just result, but doesn't change the real life story behind all of this. So another thing is that NASPA's handling of the case and further wrongdoing by other organizations make it even more obvious that the case against me is a hoax and that this is all defamation of my character and reputation. NASPA refused to give an explanation of what the supposed 3 things I did wrong were, refused to tell me that what specific wording in the code of conduct I violated, even though they said that I violated it 3 times, and they also refused to tell WESPA the reasons that they suspended me when WESPA asked them. They gave me an opportunity to appeal, and my lawyer wrote a letter to them saying, well, if I'm going to appeal, I need to know the rationale for why you suspended me, what it is you think I did. And in writing, they said back to me that they refused to give an explanation. They refused to give any more detail of what these 3 mystery violations were. And literally, they sat on their hands for about a half a year, not telling me anything more. And even after I submitted documents to them in an appeal, documents which included responses to documents that they were originally hiding from me, and that they only started showing me when they started getting letters from my lawyer, then they wouldn't handle the appeal for as long as possible. And when they were finally forced, because of a long time of pressure, to give a response to the appeal, what they responded with was complete obscurantism, was complete vague verbiage that just distorted the truth and that tried to hide behind a bunch of obfuscation to make it look like there was anything real here. And if you read it, I did a comprehensive analysis of it on the blog itself. It also, even after that, they still never specified what it was in the code of conduct that I actually supposedly violated. They never pointed to any specific passages that showed that there was anything I did or said anything specific about what it was I supposedly did that actually would have been a code of conduct violation. But in addition to saying that I needed to take down this private information, to try to intimidate me to take down the blog, they also said that I needed to sign a statement saying I agreed to abide by the code of conduct in the future. Now, why would that be? Why, when they can't say anything that I violated in the code of conduct, they can't actually point to any passage in the code of conduct that specifies anything I did wrong, are they saying I need to sign a document agreeing to abide by the code of conduct? And the exact reason is because they are trying to peddle a false narrative. They want me to take down the information in the blog, not only because it shows the intentional wrongdoing and lies of my accusers, but because it shows the intentional wrongdoing and lies of the Scrabble associations themselves. And they want to remove all of that evidence from any sort of public record and instead get a document where it looks like I am professing some sort of guilt. Other people who play in the Scrabble associations and have not violated the code of conduct have never been asked to make a document signing and agreeing to abide by the code of conduct. There is literally no reason to ask me this other than because they are trying to create that false narrative to take the blame away from themselves and falsely put it on me. So that is just also a no-go. But there's another thing. Even if I did all of this, even if I took down the blog, even if I signed a statement saying I did not violate, or I agree not to violate the code of conduct in the future, I still am under permanent probation if I am reinstated to NASPA according to the decision they made. What that means is that I would only be allowed to register for tournaments in the first half of the registration period, and I would have to tell tournament directors of my special status. Quite simply, they'd be making me a second-class citizen in the Scrabble community from now until eternity. Even though I did nothing wrong, I proved that I did nothing wrong, I proved that my accusers were the actual wrongdoers and they did so intentionally, I proved that the Scrabble associations intentionally mishandled the situation as well. But I have to pay a price, not just of the 3 years that I've already missed, but of permanently being treated as a second-class citizen. That is just a complete insult and a no-go. So I want to be clear, I do not have any desire to play for NASPA anymore. John Chu has proven through his actions that he is an immoral leader. And I do not ever want to support this organization as long as he is running the show, because he is sticking to his guns and just not going to do the right thing. However, I'm stuck because as a U.S. resident, their suspension still prevents me from playing internationally. I really am more interested in playing overseas, but while I'm suspended by NASPA, WESPA says I can't play in WESPA tournaments because other countries have to respect that suspension, and I need action from the WESPA Executive Board itself to change that situation. And based on the behavior of the WESPA Executive Board, they don't seem to be willing to change, so I need change in the WESPA Executive Board itself. And I want to be clear, what the biggest change that I'm looking for is to remove Chris Lipe from the chairmanship of WESPA. And not just from the chairman's position, but from having any position on the WESPA Executive Board. Chris Lipe has behaved in extremely unethical ways in this story, and some of it has been mentioned in my blog, but I will say there are other things that I have not yet put on the blog that are further wrongdoing by him that I strongly suspect, even if I don't completely have all of the evidence to prove, and I will go into more detail about this later. But as long as he is in that position, that is something that seems like it's going to be an impediment to me ever getting reinstated and being able to play Scrabble internationally. And I want to be clear that, I care a lot about playing Scrabble internationally. I have played in tournaments over many years on 4 continents. I've played in Australia and in Asia. I've played many times in Europe and the UK. And it's been a big part of my life, and considering that all 3 of the organizations that are running tournaments in North America have shown that they have very unethical leadership that have done seriously wrong things to me, I'm not even interested in supporting any of those organizations at this point. The only tournaments I'm really interested in playing in are overseas. And there will be an election of a new WESPA advisory board at the upcoming 2025 World Championship in Accra, Ghana. And there's hope that with new blood coming in, that we can get more just leadership that will handle this situation better. However, there are 2 particular tournaments that I am very interested in playing in overseas that are happening before a new WESPA board can come in. And those tournaments in particular are the Continental Scrabble Championship, which is happening in Budapest, Hungary in September of this year, and the aforementioned 2025 WESPA Scrabble Championship in Accra, Ghana. Which really is the closest equivalent we have to a world championship right now. So I want to be clear that the new board is coming in at the end of that tournament. The election will be happening there, but in terms of the administration of that tournament itself, it's still happening under the old board of WESPA. And let me talk about each of these tournaments in turn. First off, the Continental Scrabble Championship is a tournament that has happened in major cities in Europe every year, usually in the late summer, early fall. And I have played in it many, many times. I haven't played in all of them, but I've played in a bunch of them, including Vienna, Austria, Stockholm, Sweden, Bordeaux, France, Berlin, Germany. And it's something that I have been very happy to go to, and they've been very happy to have me there. And I've often been the highest rated or one of the highest rated competitors at those tournaments. And despite that, I've had some good results. I've won some money there, but I've actually never won first place at one of those tournaments. The best I've ever done is second place. And I really want to go back. I really want to support the Scrabble scene in Europe. And I've never been to Budapest. It would be a great place to go. And I would also like to, add to my resume that I've become Continental Scrabble Championship. But I can only win it if I can play. Secondly, the other big tournament that I want to play in is the 2025 WESPA World Championship in Akragana itself. And I want to keep in mind here that this suspension, which never should have happened in the first place, there was never any good grounds for keeping me out, already kept me out of the 2023 World Championship in Las Vegas. So if I am kept out of the World Championship in Akragana as well, those would be 2 consecutive World Championships that I am missing, when I played in the last 8 consecutive World Championships before that. I played in the World Championships in 2011, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. That is, every year the Scrabble Championship happened between 2011 and 2019. There was none in 2012. And between 2016 and 2019, the last 4 of those, I finished in the top 11 at all of those tournaments. So I've already been knocking on the door, and I'm a threat to win the World Scrabble Championship. But it's more than that. It's that I have every right to play in these tournaments. I have been a top competitor in the world and a very positive boon to the community at the World Championship and many other tournaments all around the world. And there's lots of players who would love to see me and love to play against me there and know that there's no legitimate reason for keeping me out. But even if I were to be reinstated in time to play in this World Championship, I want to be really clear. Nothing can take away the 3 years that has already been taken from me of missing Scrabble tournaments of the previous World Championship that I already missed, and all of the emotional and reputational damage that has been done to me. That is permanent damage, things that were permanently taken away from my life. And if the WESPA board continues to persist in this course of action and keeps me out of this World Championship and the Continental Championship before that, they are essentially doubling down on the wrong behavior they have already done and increasing the damage, increasing the time I'm not allowed to play, and doubling the number of World Championships that I have been deprived from playing in. And I want to be clear that this is something that I need to hold all of the Scrabble leaders accountable for. When I'm looking for justice, I mean not just me getting reinstated into Scrabble. What I need, because of this massive damage done to me, are official public statements admitting that the accuser's lies and the wrongdoing of these Scrabble leaders did this to me. What I further need is accountability for all of the leaders who cooperated in doing this to me. What that means is if some of those leaders are not willing to sign public statements admitting the wrongdoing that they have done and correcting their behavior and reinstating me fully and unconditionally to Scrabble, they need to be removed from any kind of leadership position themselves. And I want to be clear, this is not just about this upcoming WESPA election. This is about many different organizations over time, and in North America, maybe some outside of North America too. This is a fight that I am going to continue fighting no matter what. I need to be made whole as recompense for the damage that was done to me. And anyone who does not admit their wrongdoing after I've provided so much evidence of their wrongdoing, after they have piled wrongdoing upon wrongdoing, is not fit to be a political leader in this community. And if they're not willing to stop doubling down on this wrongdoing, they should never be in any leadership position at all. And I will keep doing the work to make sure that they are all eventually rooted out entirely, and that the only people who are involved in Scrabble leadership across the entire world are ethical people who do not stoop to the levels that they did. So, that is really a whole lot of the story. But I also want to tell you that despite all the negativity of that, there are some positive things here. One is that I'm going to keep advocating by talking to people who know me around the world, because I do have friends and allies and people who know I'm a good person. I've been in the game for 20 plus years. Many of whom have personal relationships with the board members. I may talk to some of the board members themselves, although there may be certain board members who refuse to talk to me because they're just trying to protect their own asses. But I will keep pushing and advocating as I can to make sure that I get justice in this situation. And meanwhile, I'm turning lemons into lemonade by using the time that I have right now, since I've not been able to work because of the mental damage that has been done to me, because of the trauma of all of this. I have had so much of the rest of my social connectivity emptied out of my life as a result of a lot of this too. But I'm using a lot of this free time now to up my Scrabble study substantially. So I really didn't study at all for about 2 years when the suspension started because it was just too traumatic for me to do so. I was so upset by the way I had been treated and so far removed from having any opportunity to play in any tournaments that I just stopped studying the words and my play eroded. And I didn't play any practice games. I really just completely got out of shape of playing because you really need to keep the study up. You need to keep up the regular play to play at your highest level. But I also want to be clear. I was at the peak of my Scrabble powers just before this suspension happened. In fact, 2 of my most successful, biggest successes in my tournament career, one of them was in March 2020, right before the pandemic lockdowns at the Grand Slam tournament in Warrington, England. And the next was right after all the pandemic hiatus from tournaments, the 2022 Crescent City Cup in New Orleans, Louisiana. I won first place at both of those tournaments against very strong fields, including a lot of other Scrabble Masters and Grandmasters. And at the same time, my play got a lot worse over the next 2 years not studying, but after the last few months of studying again, I believe that I may actually already be at a point where my word knowledge is even stronger than it was a couple of years ago when I was playing actively, or 3 years ago when I was playing actively in tournaments. Because I'm putting my extra free time to good use. And I'm saying this not just because of the amount of word study I'm doing and how I'm doing on my word quizzes, but also because I've been playing a lot of online games recently on woogles.io, the website. Some against some pretty strong human players, some against the computer. And I'm finding in both of those that I think I'm playing pretty darn well, and I have a good chance to do very well in games against strong competition yet again. And that's just now, compared to where I will be in September and November for these tournaments. I think I'll be at an even stronger point. So I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to play in those tournaments. I can't control it entirely. I have to get some action by the WESPA executive boards, as I said. But I want the whole world to know that if I am able to play in these tournaments, I believe I am a legitimate threat to win both the Continental Scrabble Championship and the 2025 World Scrabble Championship this year. I've already had a lot of top finishes, and I intend to be at an even stronger place than I was when I finished in the top 11 between 2016 and 2019. And quite simply, if I am not allowed to play in the World Championship this year, I believe that that actually reflects poorly on the World Championship. It decreases the prestige and shine of it. The title is tainted if I am not allowed to take part, because I am a good enough player to be there, and everyone knows this. And I want to be clear that I have more problems with getting there, even with some political change, because the World Championship is generally an invitational event. And it is the case that you have to play a certain number of tournaments in your home country in the rating qualifying period, get certain good results in order to even get there. And the fact that NASPA has banned me for the last few years means that I can't really be a rating qualifier for the tournament right now. But that is ridiculous. And anyone who knows me and knows the situation well enough knows that I was perennially qualifying for World Championships for a whole decade almost, and that if I am allowed to play, it is always going to be the case over the last many years that my results are going to be strong enough and my ratings are going to be high enough that I would easily qualify for the World Championship. It wasn't even a borderline thing for many years. maybe right in the beginning, my first World Championship 2011 it was, but ever since then, I have been an easy qualifier for the World Championship as long as I am allowed to play. So given that I would, under normal circumstances, always be qualifying for these World Championships, given that I am a legitimate threat to win the World Championship, it taints the title if I am kept out of it. And I believe that it's already the case that these Scrabble leaders have done a lot of damage, but if they persist in keeping me out of the World Championship, that is further doubling down on the damage that they have done, and that is something that I will further hold them accountable for. So that's the whole story in a nutshell. There's a whole lot more details on my blog at splendic.net. And I'd also say if you have any specific questions about this, I'm happy to answer them in the comments. Also, I want to be clear that I am going to continue advocating, but I don't consider this particular story, this particular statement, to be my advocacy. This is really just a statement of what the situation is and why I have to advocate. But you will see a lot more advocacy coming from me in the near future.